Welcome to the CryptoSphere podcast, where we investigate some of the most influential founders shaping the Web3 ecosystem. From decentralized finance projects to new NFT mints, we cover it all. Here are your hosts, Ryan McNutt and Christopher Reese.
Welcome to CryptoSphere, the podcast where you get to choose what we invest in. I'm Ryan.
I'm Chris, and with us is Darius. So give yourself a little intro.
What's up, everyone?
Hey,
I am gregarious. I'm a repeat entrepreneur. I've done previously went through YC for my last company, and I'm about to go into Techstars next week for my next company. We are building a community platform for Web3 projects that allows you to create gated and customized experiences, like for your supporters and members and stakeholders.
Sick,
awesome.
And Techstars starts on Monday, right?
It does start on Monday, yeah. So
that's exciting, man. Are you pumped?
It's hard to be excited for like running into a wall for 3 months straight. But yes, I mean, the journey is good. It'll be interesting for a comparison point of view though, right? Because like YC is a completely unstructured sort of like, hey, are you still alive kind of framework, right? And this one is a lot more more programming and I think more accountability ultimately. Which is good. Not a bad thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
You'll be able to give people advice on which accelerator they should go to, given that you're getting into the top 2 hardest ones. So
yeah, well, the funny thing is I've been a mentor for Techstars and for YC. So like I already know like how both programs go, but This will be interesting to be inside. I'm not mentoring this semester. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. So kind of
go for it, Chris.
I was just going to ask for Darius how he got into the idea and mindset of developing Zealous and why you applied to Techstars as a funding vehicle for that.
Yeah, good question. Zealous is sort of like the third part of a trilogy for me. When my 2 companies ago, I was the first employee. I probably could have been the third founder of this company called Clout. Which was an online influence measurement tracking company. I was the VP of product. It was me and the 2 founders for the first year. About a year or so into that, I ended up leaving Clout to go into YC to do my second company, Shoot, which was a UGC platform connecting like brands and fans and creators up. And so while we were in the midst of, while doing Shoot, as you guys are well aware, you can have lots of ideas about where you'd like your startup to go, but your startup ends up going where it's going to go. Yeah. While we were there, I sort of figured out this other idea that was related to what we were doing, but I couldn't like get the ship to turn towards it. And fundamentally that idea was just that, as someone creating or building an audience, it struck me as odd that we don't know who the people in the audience are. Right. Yeah. And more importantly, like as a business person, marketer, I'm like, well, like, how do we reach these people? How do we target these people? How do we collaborate with these people to build better products? These parts were all missing. And so it sort of set in my mind that we needed a CRM or a better kind of loyalty program or whatever it might be, around sort of the creator economy. And so after Shoot got acquired, took some time and did some consulting and whatnot. But now we started Zealous originally as a CRM platform for like your fan base. In fact, the legal name of my company is Fanbase, actually, right? So, but what Zealous became, or what it evolved into over many, many iterations and pivots, is ultimately, I think, a little bit more of the CRM side, more of that sort of like, hey, who's here? But really creating a space or a platform to help you create space for your most important people, and a way to give them the opportunity to communicate and collaborate with each other, and then ultimately to recognize who the best and most important people in that space are, and reward them.
Very cool. Very cool. And this is like your first Web3 kind of venture, right? Is that correct?
It is. I'm usually careful to make it clear I don't view ourselves as a Web3 company.
Okay.
I view ourselves kind of as a Web 2.5 company, right?
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
so, and the distinction I think is important because I think our mission is not to make Web3 easier; it's to make it more accessible, right? And so, I fundamentally want to help people with existing communities. Now they may be Web3 communities, but I still hope to be helping creators that are building and growing communities. Is to help onboard the millions of uninitiated into sort of the Web3 ecosystem. And to that end, as a developer, a technologist, I look at Web3. Web3 for me has two core constituent parts, right? Which is what I believe all innovation sort of has. One half of it is a cultural part, and the other half of it is a technological part, right? And so I believe we, in the short term, can leverage the technological parts faster than we can leverage the cultural parts, right?
Right.
So from a technology point of view, Web3 to me is about a new form and model for persistence, and a new forms and models for economics or payments, right? You can do that stuff regardless of going wholly in or whole hog on the everyone should own everything, the cultural part of what it means also, right? And so I think, pragmatically speaking, I think it's better to take the technologies, better to take the flexibility afforded by those technologies and the opportunities afforded by technologies and make them beneficial to a bigger set of people. And then maybe, hopefully, a lot of the cultural parts will also sort of make their way in as well, but they don't need to, I think, to still leverage the underlying technologies.
Very cool.
That's definitely an issue. I mean, you see that just with aggregator communities like Discord for major DAOs and stuff. And you talk to folks that are in the boomer era, and you ask them to go on Discord to join your DAO and stuff. It's they don't have no idea what Discord is or what it does or how to use it. Right.
So we sit on, by the way, our first MVP sits on top of Discord. It's basically trying to take people out of Discord so that they can have a better life. But in interviewing people, I've yet to meet someone who's Discord's I love it. I just,
It's a means to an end.
It is a means to an end. And I think it is an ill-fitted suit for the person that needs to wear it now. Right. It was great when you were a gamer. It is not quite the appropriate garb for where it's going.
Exactly.
Correct. And I mean, I guess have you seen anything about DeSo? So what do you think about them? And where they're kind of going? Do you think any of that's kind of going to be relevant going forward? Do you think it's going to blow off or blow up? A lot of people have been kind of hyping it up, or what are your kind of ideas around that?
Yeah, so I guess DeSo sort of fits in this hybrid state, right? To some extent, they're sort of acknowledging the technological parts that are there that are valuable, but to some degree, they're also rejecting some of the technological parts for a centralized sort of play, right? Or a little bit more centralized version of itself. And it's a little early to know, right? The interesting thing with decentralized things is that winning is when it centralizes, right? So right, because consensus, arguably consensus is a form of centralization, right? It's a centralization of opinion. So if more projects adopt DeSo, right, which is essentially forming a consensus, we are centralizing our agreement that this is the way it should work, right? And so this will be what we have to wait and see, I think, to see if it plays out that people choose this. It could be such that, standards are hard, right? If you think about look at our traditional world where we can, Web 2 world, it took a long time for OAuth to sort of form itself and to shape itself into what it is. And we take it for granted now. And I think that absolutely will happen with wallets and things like this, right? And identity in Web 3. But how fast? I don't know, especially when in Web 2, there was at least agreement in centralizing. So like so when we have a whole bunch of people who are saying like, no, we don't want it centralized, like it may take longer for us to realize sort of the opportunity of this. But I also think like we will not see meaningful escape velocity for Web3 without some version of this. And by the way, if you look at how it's going to win, how's it winning, right? Like when Facebook adds NFTs, right, and defaults everyone into a wallet, you're going to have a Web 2.5 solution, right?
Right.
And those people won't be any less on the blockchain, right, like than anyone else, but their primary identifier will still not be their wallet. It will be their Instagram profile or their Facebook handle, right? So yeah, I think there's still some interesting times ahead of us. I commend the folks trying to centralize or sort of to come up with new protocols and standards, because it's hard work, right? We have a lot of examples about what we want. We also, I think the problem that we have is not the agreement on the standards. It's the disagreement on the delta between what it should have done, right? And so other people are like, this shouldn't have been this way. It should have been this way. But you have like a lot of disagreement about that. And that's where I think we end up with 1,000 versions of DSO before we figure out the one that's going to sort of have the consensus.
Gotcha. So the other thing I was wanting to ask you was actually like, I saw on your website that you guys are going to have like your own token. Is that for like funding given projects? Like what are your thoughts around like doing your own token and like doing that?
I wish I could tell you the answer, but I could tell you, we have a lot of hypotheses. So the business model we're considering for Zealous, I'm actually love to hear what you guys think. It's a lot like Discord actually, except it's going to be on the blockchain. So our model is so basically in Zealous you create a space, and basically a space is like something not necessarily as big as a community, but bigger than like a channel, right? Okay. And it's just this like Google Meet that we're in right now would be a space, except it would have persistence, and we could add things to it over time, right? But the model is ultimately the model we're going to test is much like Discord, where you pay a fee per month to basically upgrade your own profile and how you represent yourself in the community. But also then you get boosts where you can actually upgrade the servers that you are a fan of. We're sort of using a model very similar to that, except in our world, what we're imagining is that we will you will pay either in fiat or crypto per month, and we will give you mint to you a certain number of Zeal coins, right? And then those Zeal coins actually get used to upgrade features in the spaces that you like, right? Except we won't. I don't think we're going to have a bundled model like Discord where it's like get to 7 boosts so that you can unlock these features. For example, in us, it might be, do you want transcription of your meetings? Do you want translation of your transcripts to another language? Do you want HD video support? Do you want recording? Do you want multicasting out to YouTube and Facebook and Twitch? Do you want to integrate with your Discord so we can like sync up stuff, right? Like, so all of these things would be capabilities that anyone in the community space could actually pay to support.
Awesome. Gotcha. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. I like that actually a lot.
That's the first layer.
Okay.
The second layer, which we don't participate in per se, is we will, and so this is like how to show how we are blending Web 2 and 3. Yeah. If, for example, in your community space that you set up with Zealous, you want to enable, say, have you guys used Twitch?
Yeah.
So you know how Twitch has channel points?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you want channel points, you could turn that on, and we'll actually just do an ERC20 for you in your own space. Right? And then basically that community will have like channel points mapped to like literally a token. And then members will be able to you'll be able to set up a scoreboard and say like these activities will earn points like basically automatically through them. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you can then have the community sharing or sending or trading those points amongst each other. So just like in Twitch, you have bits, that's going to be Zeal. Those are the dollar ones. Right. Gotcha. And then you'll have your channel points, if you opt for it, which will actually be a token that you can choose to spin up and then determine the rules for how they accrue.
Oh, wow. Yeah, awesome. I like that. Definitely something that I think you're doing a good job of taking like multiple business models and kind of combining them and then adding it on with like a Web3 approach, kind of like this like newer approach. I really like that actually a lot.
Thanks. Yeah, that's the idea, right? Is like I said, there are really strong product and technological offerings available inside of this universe. So we, for example, in our earlier iteration, we had a virtual currency, but we tracked in a database, right?
Gotcha.
And so then we had to like move it back and forth. Well, guess what? Like the composability, the transparency, all these other things are really wonderful things to offer with a coin like this. So why wouldn't we want to use that? You know, and we can do this, you know, in a gas-free environment on like, you know, Polygon or Solana or whatever it may be, right? Like, so that we can fluidly do this work and we can create external incentives. I'm also kind of like this is a gripe I have about Web3 right now, is the commingling of finance with sort of like engagement and responsibility, I think also adds disincentives, right?
Yeah.
So this is why we want these coins to be isolated to a community. Like I can't prevent someone from listing their token in like a swap, right?
Yeah. Right.
But you would hope they don't, right? Because but here's the thing. This is actually the true essence of Web3, right? Which is that to the extent that ownership participation is creating value, I can participate in the upside. And maybe that's a local currency, like inside my own economy, people would want it. Or maybe someone who wants to become part of it faster would buy those things from me, right? But I do think it creates some goofiness, right? Like I have an AMA, a coin from Rowley, a creator coin. Okay. And this is like the classic sort of dilemma that every creator coin holder kind of suffers through every day is you have whales and speculators who come in and buy your coin. But what it does is that pool of money doesn't work well next to the people who are actually just members of your community, right? Like, so it can cause like this psychological perception that the community is less valuable if the price goes down or something like that, right? Because it's better just to know people hold it, but for to not have an external price associated with it.
Right. It's almost be like supporters, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah. I got you.
What do you think some of the technological challenges are going to be when you kind of create your layer one as a way to migrate all of the traditional users from communities like, you know, Discord and all these other places that you're going to aggregate to Zealous? Is that like something that you've kind of thought about?
Yeah, you know, I think obviously the immutability of Web3 is somewhat of a challenge, right? And I think there's still a lot of, like I said, we're like, I've been collecting NFTs since like, I guess May of this year or something, or last year, sorry. So I mean, I've had crypto for a long time, but I just haven't done any NFT stuff with it, right? And I think we don't know what the business models are per se. And so it's very hard, you know, like with startups, right? Traditionally, right? You get time to mitigate, you get time to migrate, you get time to iterate, you know, and even if you have a database, it's fairly fluid to like, you know, if you need to move data, reshape it, like that's not like the hardest thing to do. I don't know that those design patterns exist yet for like, you know, like for Web3 in the blockchain, right?
Exactly.
Right? So, like there are no migrations yet, right? Like, you know, there's some there's stuff that's out there, you know, like proxies and whatnot on contracts, so you could technically swap them. So I think this is where some of the hesitancy of a lot of like Web 2 people getting into Web3 is like, well, what if we make a coin and like we need to change how it works or something? Like that's a scary thing, right? Like, like it's pretty committal, right? Like pretty fast. So, so I think like, you know, as both the you know, sort of A16Z and like Variant Fund both advise against like this idea of like progressive sort of decentralization. I think that that's going to be the cautious kind of approach that folks take. So for example, for us, when you want to sign into Zealous, you'll be able to just link your Discord or your Patreon or your Shopify or whatever you want. anything where your existing membership exists, or your NFTs, right? So you can link a wallet, choose an NFT, and say, great, anyone with this NFT can come in. What I think is interesting, or what's going to happen here, is ultimately you have folks like, we're using Web 2 constructs though, right? Like, except for the wallet, right? Like,
Right.
and Wallet Connect is just basically another layer of OAuth in my mind, right? It's not anything different. It's like an identifier comes back. There's a resource I can interrogate. And that's the same thing as being able to talk to the Facebook API or a Patreon API or a Discord API. Now, when and how I persist more things on top of that, I think you'll probably see more people say, like, I'm going to put this in a database, or maybe in a hybrid. I'm going to put it in a database and I'm going to put it in a contract. And potentially, like, if I need to, that way I have the database to replay the data, back into a new contract if I need to, right? Like, over time.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think like the immutability is definitely a huge challenge for anyone building a company. And this is like, I mean, anytime you build something, you're probably inherently going to have something that you don't like in the first iteration. And then you'll want to switch it up or change it, or maybe your whole community swaps and changes.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we don't want to do this. We want to do something else. And it's like, oh man, that'll be a pain,
Yeah.
So I think that's
Now,
definitely
what I would say is strategically, what I have seen or heard people recommend this, I've never done it, is I do see people like using Testnet sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. Like, as a backstop, like, so they're like, great, like, we're going to run this on Testnet, and then we'll just like reward you or migrate over to the real thing once we reach like a stable point or a plateau point, right? Like in capability.
That's actually pretty smart. No, I thought you were gonna go a different route and just say, like, they're gonna run it internally on Testnet. So they actually had a public product that then
I hadn't thought about that, actually. That makes sense too, though, I guess, right? Because it's all permanent and forever, right?
Right.
But yeah, I have seen people like say, like, for beta tests, for example, we'll run the beta on Testnet, and then we'll just reward all of the people who are in the beta by kind of like, airdropping them basically whatever the final thing is when it's time.
That's smart. Yeah, no, we'll probably do that. I like that idea. Yeah. Wow. Have you heard, I wanted to ask you, because we came across this website the other day. I think it's called Fire or something like that. And are you guys gonna be building out all the like OAuth stuff? So you do like the Discord sign in, all that, or are you guys gonna be using a service that then actually has that?
We've already done that historically. So we built a pretty decent auth stack. However, I will say I'm like actively investigating using Magiclink, to be honest. And the reason is Magiclink has this at heart, I think, like, Auth0, Magiclink, like all these services, like it's not hard to build off, right?
Right.
Like it's a fairly well-worn sort of thing. I think mixing Web3 into auth is a little newer, but it's not hard to do either. There's providers and strategies for whatever underlying library you're using. The interesting thing, however, that I noticed with Magiclink, which is really exciting to me, is, and I first found this when I bought like the Matrix NFTs. And I got total trash, so like they're all garbage. But unfortunately, but what the Matrix sold on Nifty, and what Nifty does, they use Magiclink as well to sign up. And the reason I found out is that Magiclink also supports blockchain provisioning out of the box. So you can actually use Magiclink and automatically assign a wallet to someone, right?
Oh.
This is pretty amazing. Cool. So this is what I was saying is, like, when I think about like doing a Web 2/Web 3 strategy, I can now basically provide a custodial wallet, right? Like, to every user out of the box, which means I can use Web 3 and still send them and push them things without them even knowing they have a wallet, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then if they decide they want to have a wallet and link one, then I just start writing to that wallet instead of to the other one.
I like that a lot. I mean, like, that's something like a lot of people that we've either talked to or seen is that, like, this whole accessibility piece of Web3 is just a nightmare. Like if you're actually wanting to go like with the wallet and do the whole MetaMask thing, I mean, that flow is so out of the norm for the common person. I mean, literally, I'm at home trying to tell my parents, hey, like this is what we're trying to build and all this stuff, right? And they were just like, what the heck are you doing? You know? And I was trying to show them like what a wallet is and what we're actually, you know, how that whole thing works and how you connect it and all this stuff. And
it's
like,
mind numbing. Yeah.
Yeah. But if my parents could sign in with like Facebook or something else, they'd be fine.
I think custodial wallets are probably going to have a pretty big future, right? Like for this reason, right? Not because like, you know, and again, this is what I mean about the cultural part, right? Like the majority of people are not actually in it because they're like scared of being observed, or they're fearful of like governments watching. Like that's just not really like, most people don't harbor these sort of concerns, right? Like the anarchist parts of like sort of, you know, this stuff is not usually shared by most people, right? For better or worse. I'm not judging it one way or the other, but I think most people don't give a crap, right? Like they just want to be able to like, right? Like they're just like, can I just have this thing so that when I go to this other place, it works, right? And if Facebook implements my wallet for me, like they don't even know they have a wallet, I can use my Facebook account on Coinbase to like buy something. Cool. Like I can play in the game too, right? Like that's going to be the big unlock for us, right? Like is when that happens, right? Like the security stuff is like a massive constraint here. All of the hack stuff, like you need a big company protecting people from getting screwed over, right? Like, I mean, people still get their Twitter accounts hacked, their Facebook accounts hacked, and that's with 10,000 employee companies like trying to protect you, right? Like, so, you know, like people getting rugged is like is the number one thing that's going to prevent people from getting into this space.
Right. And also, like, I mean, just like I feel like a lot of people are so used to, I mean, you send a payment to somebody or you do a credit card transaction and it's like, oh, you could do a chargeback, or you could say, hey, PayPal, like this guy didn't send me my stuff, you know, give me my money back. And that doesn't exist. You know, so it's kind of like, how do you, I feel like that's going to be some system that has to be kind of created in the future as well, in some regard. Cause I mean, what else can you do? I mean, like if, that was kind of why PayPal got invented, from my understanding, was or a really good use case was when they linked with eBay, was people were sending goods or they weren't sending it at all, and they could, you know, say, hey, I need my money back. And my dad would tell me about this, like early days, you know, they were sending checks across, and it was like, oh, they would get a check, and then it was like, oh, well, he didn't send me my stuff, and then you just out the money. And you know, I think we'll have the same thing. I mean, we got.
It's why OpenSea works, though, right? Because OpenSea actually handles the escrow, like they handle the storage, and they handle like the state. Now, whether or not there's a bad party on the other end, at least there's this layer.
Exactly.
Like, I got the money. Like now, I'm gonna like send you the thing, right? Like, there's still no backseas, right? Like,
no backseas,
you know, right? So, you know, but again, like this is an innovation that can be solved for, right? Like, it could be such that there are contracts that wrap like the actual NFTs, right? Like you could put an NFT inside of a 720 inside of a 1150, right? Like what is it, 1155, right? Whatever it is, and basically you could use that as a wrapper that allows to pass through only after a confirmation. But you know, this is complicated crap, right? Like, I mean, so yeah, I you know, the news is out now that like, you know, Facebook and Instagram are going to have NFTs. And then that means that, you know, of course, TikTok's going to have them. And it also means that, you know, LinkedIn's going to have them. And, you know, and then now you've got billions of people with like a wallet, right? And then that's going to change everything.
Yeah. That'd be a pretty awesome day, I feel like. Because I mean, there's a lot of people who haven't gotten into space just because they don't have one. So I think that'd be pretty cool day.
Yeah, I mean, people are like, you know, I hear in all the groups I'm in, like, oh, people are like, yeah, I went to an engraver, I got my like seed phrase like engraved in a brass plaque, and it's
metal plates,
yeah, you know, and it's in my house, so just in case the house burns down, the plaque won't melt, you know, like, and I'm like, oh my god, like, wow.
I've heard about that. I haven't personally done that.
Yeah, I haven't done it either.
I heard there was also like this weird puzzle thing that people have been making where it's got like bolts on it. And so it's like however many bolts is relevant to like your seed phrase or something like that. And it was like this massive thing. And I'm like, why would I want that in my house? Like, I was just weird.
Yeah. So it is, like we're very, as is commonly said, we're still in early days, right?
Yeah.
But the reason I'm so invested in Web2 though, still, I think is ultimately like, is for creators in particulars. I think most creators are still part-time, right?
Yeah.
Like of the 50 million creators, there's like something like 48 million that are part-time, right? And they need money to pay their rent, right? Like they need money to like pay their bills. And maybe if crypto was more pervasive as a payment method, but also wasn't entrapped in all of the tax and other nonsense that's like associated with it, like you could make a better case for it. But we're a ways away from, I think, that being viable, right? Like, people don't understand, like a Bitcoin ATM is like literally the dumbest thing in the world, right? And here's why. Because not for the depositing part, that part's fine. But for you to withdraw any crypto, it automatically creates like a taxable event, right? And most people aren't aware of this, right? So it's like, yeah, sure. You use your ATM card to take out like $1, except the tax burden of that $1, because you got your Bitcoin at like like whatever cents, and now it's at 50,000, is like $49,000, right? So like, that's why it doesn't make sense to use crypto as currency in the real world yet, right? Unless you like have a strategy of like converting it to USDC, or something stable like that, where, like quickly converting, right? And those strategies will evolve, right? But buying an NFT is even worse, right? Because like, it's like 3 taxable events, like at the same time, right? Or selling one in particular. Like I bought like 50 something NFTs last year. I didn't sell any of them because I didn't want the tax part of selling them, but I already have a tax part from the delta in the money. Like I got my Ether, I don't know, like 7 years ago, right? Like,
oh shoot, yeah,
right. Like all the Ether I play with online was like money I got for doing I did a website for an ICO ages ago. They paid me in Ether, and I waited years for it to get back above like where it was like what it was worth, right? But yeah, I think I got my Ether at like maybe like $500 or something, right? And
nice.
Yeah. So, so there's just like, so every time I was spending it, I'm like, all right, I'm actually in my head keeping track of like how much income I'm generating or capital gains ultimately, right? Like on just even spending it. And then I was like, man, if you sell it fast, there's collectible considerations. There's the new delta on like what you made on it. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with any of that this year. I'll do that next year. So I'll try to start selling some this year now, finally.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, we had a cool guy on our podcast actually last week. We haven't pushed the episode yet, or actually this week. It was this week on Tuesday.
Elliot.
Yeah. Have you seen his project?
I'm in his Telegram group and his Discord. Yeah, he and I chat almost every day in one way or another.
Yeah, you'll like his stuff. I mean, dude is super passionate about NFTs.
Yeah,
he's super cool dude, super nice guy, but super passionate about NFTs. Yeah, I mean, I think his project is freaking cool. But yeah, I mean, NFT space is just blowing up. I mean, we're trying to figure out how we can do our own NFT soon. Are you going to do NFTs for your stuff?
Yeah, good question. Another topic I'm fond of. So I'm doing I do a live stream 3 times a week, and the Tuesday show that we do, it's called The Created Economy. It's all about creators and the sort of the founders and builders in the space. But on Tuesdays, we actually do a series called Created Work, where it's for the last 3 weeks and for the next, I think like 4 or 5 weeks, we're actually walking through how founders can leverage Web3 to fundraise.
Nice.
Right. And so first episode, we talked about like what Web3 was. Second episode, we talked about like traditional VC versus community VC. And we had like a VC on with us to chat about it last week or yesterday, actually. Wait, what day is it? Or whatever. It was Tuesday. Tuesday, we had we started talking about like the changes you have to make to your MVP, basically,
Gotcha.
like if you start to integrate Web3 into it. The goal of this series, though, is that by the end, I'm going to mint a beta access pass to Zealous that you can buy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's pretty sweet.
So all of not our first users will give people access, but the only way to get into Zealous will be to hold one of these passes.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Have you figured out which? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say that's interesting that's kind of your approach for the utility and the token you want to mint, because we're thinking something very similar to that.
I didn't come up with this, but because I've seen a few folks do this, but I believe in this model because it's revenue now, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
So you can actually just sell access. The most popular or the best one I've seen so far, I think, is this company Floors. It's like an iOS app, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's on his 3rd generation already of passes. I think he does them like 500 at a time. And they went up in price, up from 0.1 to 0.2 to I think this is how I might be misquoted, but they moved up in price from 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 ETH basically for the passes. And I believe they've all sold out as gone through, because the product gets more valuable in each generation of the product, right? But also he then has it like kind of coupled in. I think, like, for example, you could generate then like a governance token and then give that to all these early pass holders and allow them, for example, to vote on your product roadmap, right? Gotcha. So there's ways to tie it into the product itself, right? Like, or use that early adopters, like for getting early access to your beta, private Discord channel for support. Like there's other things you could do once you have this represented this way, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really good. Another app I know that uses this is Use Gallery, right?
I haven't heard of that one.
And they're like an NFT gallery application. And the way I came about it was my friend Chris Messina, I think, had set one up, and I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And so they had a sign in link at the top, and when you click sign in, or connect wallet. When you connect your wallet, it's like, hey, you don't have a pass, but you can go buy one on OpenSea, and it was like 0.2 ETH to actually get in.
Awesome. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were thinking about doing that because we're doing this, like credit platform is the end goal. We were thinking about like having different stages of NFTs, and then like the top stage being one where people will get fast tracked to credit. So we can have like beta users of that part of our platform. Because that's going to be kind of the hard piece of it, because we kind of have this like time idea on moving people from collateral to insurance back to then credit. Nice. And going across that like bridge from one side to the other, like it's going to be tough if we don't have any kind of users. So yeah, we've definitely been thinking about that a lot and tossing it back and forth. But honestly, the most challenging thing for us has been artwork. We keep going back and forth about artwork. Did you guys have a similar thing, or were you guys just like 1, 2, 3, it's this art and just roll with it?
Hey, we'll do some artwork, I guess. Like I made like a super crap one. Like actually, we were testing this. So we started coding like in public, like building like this thing. And so like while we were there, I'm like, wait, it turned like I have a bunch of NFTs, but my co-founder and our other engineer don't have any. So I was like, wait, how do we test this? Right. So
right.
So I actually just went on OpenSea. I made like a ping in Figma and I dropped it in. And if you go to like my NFT collection, you'll see like this Zealous alpha chat pass. And it's like, basically like there was only 5 of them. And you can like take it and use it to get into this like thing that we were making.
Nice.
So I don't think the art is the thing with, at least in this use case, right? Like,
it's more the utility than anything.
It's pure utility. I do think, I consider other variations of this, by the way. For example, if you wanted a certain username, right? Like you would buy a pass, right? So like, Islands, for example, I think was doing something like this, right? Like they weren't charging for it, but you got minted a pass or an NFT like upon claiming like your space. And so you could think like in how ENS does it, right? Like if you wanted a short name for your space, or your product or your user name or whatever it might be, like it could be like, great, like 5-letter it up is free, but if you want like a 4-letter username, you have to buy this pass. And if you want a 3-letter username, you have to buy this pass, right? And then you're allowed to unlock like a 3-letter username or a 4-letter username.
Yeah, I mean, the whole NFT thing, I mean, really just the part of front loading value for your platform, I think is like the biggest thing that is just so
For
cool.
startups, it's remarkable, right? Like,
it's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, I was
Yeah.
talking to a guy yesterday who raised 2.5 mil
wow.
in a week. Just
For a
from,
startup
like,
this way?
yeah.
Whoa.
He ultimately ended up like giving the money back and doing some stuff with that. But like, you know, but the ability to go
Something
from
about jail
zero-
time and no.
yeah.
Or in the Web3 space, he just got distracted with something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Return this, and
He's like,
go
wait,
fund some
do I
other
have to go
vision."
do this work now? Forget it. Yeah, you can have your money back.
But yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. It's amazing. I mean, like we were looking at a project this morning. Chris, what was that one? It was some kind of pass, Nelk Gallery or something.
Oh yeah, it was like a. Have you ever heard of the Nelk Boys?
No.
They're a really big YouTube creator.
Oh, that sounds cool. Right up our wheelhouse.
Yeah. So they
What's
do a
their
lot
channel
of
called?
kind of like Nelk Boys.
No, the it's like off something, and they had that football player on it.
Oh yeah, they have a Nelk podcast as well.
Canadians.
And essentially what they did is they created and minted this like Nelk Boys pass.
The full send meta card. I'm looking at it right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The full send meta card. They minted 10,000 of these at about 1 ETH each. And their roadmap was like,
wow.
Yeah, 1 ETH. They got 250,000 Discord members in the span of like 3 days. And then they sold out 10,000 of these at like 1 ETH.
Holy crap.
And their roadmap was like the most insane thing ever. Like, we're going to buy all these businesses. We're going to create lounges. We're going to get casinos. And it's like, okay, guys, like, come on.
So it said, so this is the only problem I have seen is, you hear, if you ever go into like Twitter spaces or anything with some of these folks, and some of them they've raised a decent amount of money. I'm just not sure of the chops that everyone's quite applied to these, I heard, I was in one for a project that I like, and I wish I could own one, but it's too expensive for me to get into. But they're like, yeah, we're going to be $1 billion business. And I'm like, how? Right. Like we're entrepreneurs. And I'm like, when I like non-speculative $1 billion business is, I guess, very different than a speculative $1 billion business, right? Like,
right.
I'm sure there's going to be $1 billion NFT project. Wait, I mean, there may already be, right? Like what is Bored Apes worth, right? Like for all of them.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, insane.
Right. But no one owns all, like, so like, fine, your doodles or your whatever, you don't own all of it. Right. Like, so,
right.
You still only have like 10,000 customers, right? Like, so like you can't make $1 billion selling to just these 10,000 people. Right. Like,
right.
There can be $1 billion in maybe stored value across all of them. Right. But so, sometimes it's just a little bit of a disconnect. I think like, I have a lot of friends that have become like fairly well-known, and we always joke that no one teaches you how to be famous. Right. Well, no one also doesn't teach you how to be $1 billion business. Right. Like, and so, you could have $5 million. That's not worth crap in the world. Right. Like, like it's great, like for a lifestyle person, but like the second you want to go buy something and operate it, guess what? Like you're probably gonna need a lot more than that, like to survive, like, 6 months.
Right. Right. Go do something major. I mean, you're going to need insane amounts of capital to do.
Well, yeah, but also you need credibility, right? Like, because like you like, fine, you've got your 5 million to start. Where's the rest come from? Like, and can you actually go back to the community to generate that again or on demand as needed? Right. Like, so yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges on the business side, I think, as well. Just like, which is what we saw in the creator economy, right? Like, cause you have like sort of folks, not overnight, like for the most part, right? Like who are slowly building to the point that they sort of achieved a level of success. But not all of them are like that sophisticated as business people. Like they're great creators, they're entertaining, they're knowledgeable, they have great skill sets. But like being business people is not necessarily one of them, right? Like,
Right.
And so like, once you start to add that team on and start to build the mound around sort of this thing you have, it starts to add up, right? And you have to diversify. And I think there's a lot of complexity sort of built into this, right? That gets overlooked, right? Like, we hear these stories and it's fantastical. It's amazing. Yeah. These guys, like, I read the thing here. It says it's for 0.75 ETH. And in less than 10 minutes after the public sale, they sold out all of them. Right. That's awesome. Right. But like, what did these guys do with $23 million? Right. Like, and here's the other part, right? Like when you make a lifetime pass, for example, there's certain number of years you've got to like budget out to support sort of the activities for, but then you also have to build a way for the treasury to replenish itself, right? Like, and so
right.
I don't know, like there's a lot of complaint. Like, let's be clear. This is the same reason that like we have a chance to succeed as business people here is because business is still is hard to do, right? Like, and the cultural parts does not provide any other like business guidance, knowledge, or insight, of Web3. These business models being undone, that's very temporary. It will go back to like traditional business models because unless everything's in the metaverse and you just get to make up all the rules.
And this is something I've been thinking about a lot. Like, do you think venture capitals will play as large of a role in Web3 where like things may not be considered a security and people can kind of crowd stuff,
I'm torn on this. I'm very torn on this, I would say, right? So if you look at remember we were joking about how decentralized things are earlier. If you look at it, who are the biggest stakeholders in Web3 right now? VCs again, right?
They're all VCs.
Right? So now, granted, they had maybe a capital advantage to start, right? But my guess is the role will change to some degree, right? Like like for example, like we just got to the point like where crowdfunding was sort of like an accessible pathway for most startups, right? Yeah. Like something like Republic or something like that, right? Because like the accreditation thing has sort of come off, and all these other things have proven true. So Web3 is sort of playing in the same pool as like Republic or other things are. It's just on the blockchain versus not on blockchain. Do most people believe that kind of funding will displace VC? No, right? Like there's no one saying, like the role of venture is going away because Republic or, crowdfunding exists, right? Will it change the proportions? I think so, right? The ratios likely will balance out a bit more, right? But it's highly predicated on the idea that people have disposable income to deploy behind these projects, and then to continue to do so without receiving returns or potentially getting frauded out of things, right? The second layer, though, I think the construct that will help hold up the VC side is that regulation is coming, right? And these things will begin to operate or be under the scrutiny that does exist around securities and the Huey Act, all these other like things that exist, right? And so when that happens, all the fun and gusto that we see sort of now, I think will dissipate or become like onerous or will be like happening in like, you remember like way back, like all the internet casinos were like in the Isle of Man. For some reason, right? Like, because it was like the one state, like everything, all this crap's going to end up like in Estonia or something, right? Like, and maybe that's what's going to happen, right? Like with this, right? But I do think the regulatory part that will happen, the tax parts, which will come into fore, and then I think just the general, investing works. The people aren't used to losing money. You always hear the highlight reel, but the reality is that most of us are going to fail. Like, 95% of our startups are going to fail. 98% of our startups are going to fail. 99.5% of NFT projects are probably going to end up underwater, right? Like, right. Like, so people aren't really ready for like that future yet either, because most people don't understand. They've only heard the highlight reel. They haven't had to see the failure part.
It's going to be interesting to see how much appetite the the retail investor has for economic waste versus your VC model, right? I mean, your retail model focuses on kind of a lack of regulation and lack of due diligence and such. So like,
for sure,
look at that. Like the chance of success is like far less than like a seasoned VC, right? I mean, so how much economic waste can these people tolerate?
We should want it. We should want to protect people from those things, right?
Exactly.
Now we don't need necessarily VCs to be the gatekeepers here, right? Like I believe there are. There's going to be index models like for investment that I think like DAOs represent this to some degree, right? Like there are lots of investment DAOs, and I could take a position in an investment DAO and rely on people with better expertise and better knowledge to at least try to help me make some of these deployments, right? So I think like that index model will probably rise up, and that will become like some of this protective layer that that individuals can participate in. Like I'd like that right now. Like I was saying the other day in a group, I was like, I wish there was like an index fund for investing in women-led NFT projects, right? Like, because I don't always have time to find them, but also I don't always have funds to literally buy into each one of them, right?
Right.
And so like, but I would still love to participate in it, and I'd love to be able to like, hey, can I put 1 ETH into this fund? That fund's going to be out there getting onto allow lists and getting pre-allocations from a lot of projects to support like where a big community is able to support it, right? And then as sales transact or whatever, then we start to play with it, right? And again, this would be interesting stuff to have model out, like because you could have like these things go in a safe, and if there's ever offers above like our rule is going to be if we can 2x on a thing, right? Like we're going to automatically sell. And so that's how you start to give like the more traditional sort of, what are those things called? Mutual funds, sort of like predictability, right? Like, because, like you could start to offer kind of like returns like that, which I think is super compelling, like in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Oh, super compelling. I mean, I was talking to a guy yesterday, who's actually starting to do, his project is to do fractional shares of NFT projects.
Yeah.
I mean, I think something kind of like that would have to be built out to then build like these ETFs of like certain like projects or types of projects, right? So, I mean, he was a really cool guy. He's actually going to be a mentor for Techstars this year.
Oh, cool.
Here in Austin. Yeah. So he's here in Austin. And he's going to be a mentor on that. So his name's Kevin. I can shoot you his like Twitter. And stuff
please. I'm looking for mentors. We still have to do our mentor madness for Techstars soon, and I need to pick some folks. By the way, I think this also applies to like what you were describing. One of the projects we tried to do like ages ago, I actually got interviewed for YC for this other idea earlier, but it was a pre-blockchain idea. But it was the idea of like letting people lend money to other people, like, or funding loans to individuals. Right. And we were looking at it on the blockchain, but like literally we didn't know enough about it. So we that's why we didn't get it. But because it was like 5 years ago, I guess. But the idea was like very similar. It's like, well, what if I could front the money? Like imagine being able to like a model I'd imagined. I had a funny version of this, like where I took like who had a lot of cash that they were scared to they couldn't put in the bank. And so I was like, what if we took all the cash dispensaries, right? Or the cannabis dispensaries, right? And we allowed them to become like the ATM, like where you could go in with an app and someone say like, I need $1,000, and basically someone would back you, like we'd back you with the money, but you would actually show them a QR code, and the dispensary would give you the money and start earning interest on what they fronted to you, right? Like so, like turning every dispensary into Western Union. Right. Yeah, there you go. and then basically providing like a model where the community could like buy the debt like from someone, like, and basically displace it and start paying the dispensary back instead.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. I love it.
Well, they have piles of cash, right? Like, and literally, like, it makes perfect sense to be able to drive up to a dispensary drive-through window, say, "Here's my QR code. Here's $100, $1,000, whatever you need the money for," right? And you're approved by, doing this thing. And then like, it's like staking, right? Like almost, right? Like where the dispensary is staking the cash, And we say, great, like we'll stream you back out like a dividend on that.
Yeah.
And the person's still responsible for paying it back, right? Like,
right. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I like that idea a lot. Because I mean, yeah, they definitely have a ton of cash on hand. I mean, the main thing that like I get really like excited about for like our idea is doing like stuff for like the unbanked. I mean,
that
like,
was what we were trying to solve for, right? Was like literally the people who are unbanked or people getting paid on like prepaid cards and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And this was the same thing, is like they don't have fungibility, right? Like so they need access to this. So we spent a long time working, like trying to think through this project, and this was the idea, was like, if you know, kind of like Kiva, but at an individual level, like, you know, like, can I find 10 people willing to stake this person? And so what we would do is put the money up for the dispensary to give them the money, and then the person's responsible for paying us back ultimately. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I love it. I think we're getting close to time. So where can people find you? Where can people find your casts and stuff that you do?
Oh yeah, sure. So our show is over at created.show. That's the official show page for our recurring show. And then Zealous is at Zealous.app if you want to check out what Zealous is up to.
And then do you have any socials people can find you at?
I'm gregarious on Twitter. I'm gregarious wherever I can be. If not, I'm gregariously.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, this has been a ton of fun. Yeah, ton of fun.
I appreciate it. No, it's been a good combo, and you know, I think all these topics are just so top of mind and relevant right now. So it's always fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it was great talking with you, and yeah, we look forward to seeing how Zealous and all that stuff works out. Keep us updated. I'm sure we would love to use it. Let us know about the NFT drop as well. That'd be awesome. And yeah.
Awesome. We appreciate it for sure.
Thanks, Darius.
You bet.
Thank you, Darius.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Sphere DAO and online at spheredao.finance. Check back weekly for new episodes, and for additional content, check us out on Medium. Until next time, keep hodling.